Alright everybody, it's time for a little history lesson with Professor Alexis. I'm here at the William T Stead Memorial, and that's who we're going to be talking about today. He's a pretty amazing guy. So William T Stead was a very, very popular journalist in the early 1900s. He had met kings, popes, bishops, and the reason he was actually coming to the United States in 1912 was to meet President Taft, so this is a pretty important guy. Now, I am fully convinced that if this guy was alive in modern times, he'd be a talk show host. He was very smart, very funny, and very well put together, and he was very well loved, so I fully believe he would have been the guy making jokes about politicians on TV. Now, another thing that Stead is very famous for is being on board Titanic. He was actually a victim in Titanic. He did not survive the sinking. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this guy, but it is so hot outside, so I am going to walk. There is a birch not too far away, so we're going to go there, film a little bit more in the AC with some coffee. While I'm walking though, I do want to point out that Mr. Stead's memorial is on Museum Mile. It's right next to Central Park. It's very, very beautiful, so obviously he was a pretty well-loved guy to get a spot so close to a bunch of different museums. I'm also right next to the Guggenheim Museum, which I've been wanting to go to anyway, because guess what? Ben Guggenheim was on Titanic as well. It's Titanic kind of day, y'all. I hope you guys appreciate that I'm wearing this shirt, because I only wore it so I look like a professor, but it's so hot outside. So as soon as this video is over, you better believe I'm taking it off. We're still outside, because that store was a lot smaller than I thought it was, and I didn't really want to bother the people working there or just chilling in there. But I do have my coffee sitting right outside, and I'm happy. To get back on topic, William Stead was an extremely important figure in journalism, just huge. He actually was one of the, I guess, stepping stones that led into things like tabloids, and he was really aware that journalism could affect the way that people think and the way that people see, which clearly you can tell that's working right now, because the media has so much effect on what we know and how we see the world, and he was very, very aware of that. William Stead was also a huge proponent and was a big part of the movement to raise the age of consent from 13 to 16, which at the time, this was before the 1900s, so this was late 1800s. People were very stuck in their ways, and they thought that 13 was an adult woman. This didn't really affect the men too much, but that 13 was an adult woman. And he was a really big push saying, no, they're not. They're not adults yet, so you really need to change it to 16 when they're actually developed and actually know what's going on, which, you know, is a huge deal. Clearly, if anyone knows any 13-year-olds, they are not adults. Even 16-year-olds are barely adults. I'm 22 and I'm barely an adult, let's be real. But he was a really, really big push for that, to get that age of consent pushed back. And it actually did work. So by the time you get to the 1910s, it did switch to 16 years old. So it really did help a lot. Now, another thing about Stead, which will be exemplified when I tell you later stories, is that he had a tendency to stretch the truth just a little bit to get what he wanted. And everything that he did, he believed he was doing for the greater good. Like he knew what needed to be done, he knew what needed to be changed, and he was willing to lie and manipulate a little bit to make sure that we got to that end. So it's kind of the end justifies the means is kind of what he was going for. So didn't always tell the truth, but it always got to a good outcome. Stead was from England, so a lot of the journalism he did was really affecting England. However, the reason that in 1912 he was crossing the North Atlantic was to meet President Taft, which again was a really, really big deal to have someone so sensationalized as Stead to come to the US and meet the president. It was a really, really big deal. Now, Stead was a very wealthy guy at this point. He made lots and lots of money. He was very sensationalized, very well known. He decides, if I'm going to cross the North Atlantic, I'm going to do it in the most stylish way possible. So he books himself a ticket on the Titanic. Now, I think everyone in the world knows how that went down. We're actually going to talk about what happened on the ship before the sinking. because Taft was a very charismatic, very funny guy, and he kind of always had like a posse around him, and if he didn't, sometimes he needed his space, but he loved telling stories, absolutely loved talking to people, entertaining people. So there was a night that he was out sitting with some friends, and they were all sitting around him and talking. Now, as a little bit of pretext, in 1912, people were obsessed with Egypt. Absolutely obsessed. It was kind of the place to be. It was the fad of the time. And the unsinkable Molly Brown actually kept an Egyptian talisman with her at all times as a symbol of good luck. So Egypt was just a really big deal. The richest people on board, John Jacob Astor and Madeline Astor, they had gone to Egypt on their honeymoon. It was just a really, really big deal. Now that you know that Egypt is so big, Stead, surrounded by friends, starts talking. And they say, hey, we're bored. You should tell us a story. You're so good at telling stories. Just tell us a story. So he tells them, did you know that there was a mummy on Titanic? Now, there wasn't. He says, did you know that there's a mummy on this ship as we speak? Yeah, there's this mummy, and it was cursed years and years ago. And every museum who has ever had it has had some tragic event happen to it. And every caretaker that's ever messed with it has been cursed. Now, the people around him fully believe this story. And the ones that don't, they know this is just a story, they don't say anything. Let's let them have the fun. Now, there is no mummy on board. No mummy whatsoever. But he told his friends that there was. Now, people at different tables and people across the ship started to hear this story get spread around. And they believed it. They believed there is a cursed mummy on this ship that we are currently on, and I can't believe this is happening. Why would they bring a cursed mummy onto this ship? Now, a few days later, we're on Titanic, remember? We hit an iceberg. Now, there were a few people in this situation that thought, there was a cursed mummy on the ship. Of course we went down, we brought a cursed mummy onto our ship. What did we think would happen? Of course, it's cursed, that's why it's all going down. This is the worst thing that could ever happen to us ever. Now, of course, like I said, there was no mummy. It wasn't on board. There was no mummy's curse. Now, unfortunately, Mr. Stead did not survive the sinking of Titanic. And because he didn't survive, there was no one there to say, no, there was no mummy. I just made it up for the story. It was all for the laughs. There was no mummy. So people believed it. Now, I used to work at the Titanic Museum for 4 years. And I haven't been back there for a couple years. I haven't worked there, I've been back. But people would come into the museum and ask about the mummy. So he was so influential that a story that he made up on this ship lasted for years and years and years, over 100 years, so that people would come into a museum and ask about the mummy, but it never existed. It was all just this guy making the whole thing up. So this video is in honor of Mr. William T Stead, to thank him for his work in journalism and for his outlandish movements and the way that he, maybe didn't tell the truth all the time, but had the right thing at heart, which I think is very Slytherin, but that's just me. William, you're a Slytherin. I love you. You're the best. Me too. We get along. So this has been your history lesson of the day. Hope you enjoyed it. I hate to do this. I'm so cliche, but like and subscribe if you feel like it.